Um, yeah, I don't know if it makes sense.
Okay, I started the recording so that in case we forget, then we can watch it.
Yeah, all good.
um, yeah, I mean, I can only. So I remember we talked about plans and automation. I think we kind of agreed that we want to have a slot enough information in there to like be able to generate stuff out of it, right? Better have more information than too little, right?
Yes.
So my strategy would have been once we have a release candidate, the first one, I would have just went through all the significant changes that we made and just handwritten the change logs in the same format that I have it in the data patch
Yeah.
with the YAML files. So have a title, have a change details, and then write what it does, and then put some labels, and then put like a version, like any version really. The version is just there to filter it for like the target version could be any string, right? And so then and then you can pick these YAML files for for this version, and then generate the change log, right? And then when we make a new release, then the new YAML files, they would have a different version written in there, or they can also be moved into a different folder, right? So you can move
Yeah.
these around, these YAML files. And the thing is, so the reason why I handwrite these is because what happens is that changes mutate or are removed again, or like, so before you do a release, it's possible that a change you made is not the right change to make, and then you say, okay, that needs to be going away again, so you just delete it, right? Or it needs to be modified because it's not correctly described, or something needs to be amended because something is missing from it, right? So
Yeah.
you can edit this thing, which happens regularly, and only when we reach the release and those changes have made it into the public facing release candidate, then these should be immutable, right? It should be static, and then we
Yes.
would create a new set of changes. And then if we make new fixes for things that we have broken in a previous one, God forbid that we do that, right?
Yeah.
But it could happen, then that would have to show up in the new change log that we correct a previous mistake we made, right? So then
Yeah.
we cannot edit this. And so the burden here is to write this by hand. um, but I mean, on the other hand, we just write brief lines in there, right? So it's nothing too complicated. But yeah, it is monkey work, so it's not
Yeah.
pleasant. So
I watched Dr. Goldfish's stream where he tested the newest patch version, and people were asking in the chat, and of course we do not have something concrete right now, but it made me think that when we inevitably do push out a release or the community patch, will we have to do all the monkey work you're talking about? Like, and then does that mean it has to be the same person who does it every time? Because if not, then we need to create either a description on how you should do this, or we have a bunch of different ways of writing the the different YAML files, right?
yeah,
For
so
each pull request. And
so
also, I just looked before, we have what, 450 closed ones and maybe 300 or something merged PRs. And I know not all of them is going to be relevant in the changelog, but I mean that's a lot of even if even if you don't write a file for each of them, it's still a lot of work just to go
yeah,
through and decide is it relevant and is it not relevant and who decide what's relevant and yeah.
yeah, yeah, it can take a couple weeks to do this. So I remember when I made the change log for the patch the first time, before I then kept maintaining it with each change I added. It took me probably 6 weeks to do this or so. So it was quite a lot of work, yeah. But I also wrote like I first had to come up with a format, and I also wrote the Python stuff. So that was there too. But the biggest work is actually writing the changelog. So like if we have a maintainer who wants to commit to this long term and wants to keep writing it, and it's not me, then I would very much welcome it because it is a lot of work. One difficulty also is if we don't link it to the changes that we make, like we don't do it right now, right? So it's loose, and then if you do it like retroactively, then there can be always the danger of missing something, right? That you forget the documenting.
Yeah.
So I think it is a good habit to actually create the YAML files with each change. This is how I do it in the
I agree.
patch, and that works just fine. So every PR, I then just create this YAML file after the PR has its initial commit, and then I just add the YAML file on top with like the description. So like in the pull request, I typically write more information in the description. Like I can add videos and irrational text and findings and so on. And in the changelog, I keep it more brief. But if something is more complicated, then I also describe it in more detail. Like if for example, if something is controversial in the patch, then I write a bit more to it to explain like what is the reason for it, which I find is probably interesting for people who read it, like not just say what has changed, but also help understand what it is. Maybe you can look at some examples to get like a feel. How about that?
Yeah, I did look at some of the YAML files when I first looked at this.
Ah, you did already. Okay.
Yeah. So I know the general structure.
Okay.
But I agree it makes sense to have files, and again have them immutable once we say, okay, this is part of a release or a version number. And what I feel here is the two things I feel is important here. One, that we kind of agree on a way to write these pull requests, because currently everyone has their own way of doing it. Maybe some way to standardize this would be great, just for overall transparency and efficiency. Number two, the other difficult thing here is to decide what needs to go in the changelog, maybe multiple different kinds of changelogs, and how do we decide this? And I mean,
Yeah.
I do believe we can solve both of the issues and all the issues here, so we can have like a formatted, nice, mandatory things that need to be filled out. We've already decided on a somewhat standardized title. Maybe also you're required to write a brief, just a very short explanation of what you did, and then we can maybe some other metadata, and then at the end we can have like the write whatever you want. This will not be part of either the YAML file or the changelog. This will just be so when people link to the pull request, there are some additional information regarding maybe some weird implementation or workaround or something like that. Yeah, and then maybe the reviewers can decide on what needs to goes in the changelog, either with a label or a, let's say, check mark somewhere in the pull request as well. And this way you can kind of we can agree when we review if this is relevant for players, for developers, something, and then just the reviewer or you or someone else be like, yeah, this is relevant, this is not relevant, tick, don't tick. And then when we do a release, we have a script that just goes through all of them, and if the box is ticked, then we write the brief or the title or whatever and link to the pull request, and then that is kind of the changelog. And we can even filter them by fix or feature or
But
or stuff like that.
yeah,
If we
but yeah, so I mean, it's the problem is if we rely on every author maintaining this, then yeah, then the changelog will be different by each author because not there will be no consistency in how people write things. I can already tell you this.
yeah, okay.
It's a,
But the only way to get around this is either to have a few people decide on, then okay, how do we word this PR in a changelog, and they have to write it, or because, or yeah, as you say, we have one who is in charge of this, and that person needs to be there and hand over the torch if he for some reason decides to leave the project.
yeah, it's a great pain. The problem, so I mean, the essential information is in each pull request already in, right? So it has the title and it's typically concise, and then it has a detailed description. So all the information that would are relevant for a changelog, they are already in each pull request, right?
Yeah, so it's more
Maybe
of how do we.
maybe minus some of the early Filivia pull requests that didn't have any descriptions. Yeah.
Yeah,
But generally, those changes that touch the game, they have like descriptions and titles, right? And they have the labels as well, right?
yeah,
And the labels, they are one-to-one the same in the YAML files. And then you have a date as well, so that's also in there. And so a lot of key points are already there. So that's just about like copy pasting it over or generating like a template with some script from the commits and do that as a starting point. Like you could write a script that it generates a YAML file with a title and the date and the labels out of commits, right? And then you can manually craft these and optimize them, right, to make them more friendly. Right? You could do that.
yeah. I maybe also thought about that we can then just add a few more labels that is like, okay, this is changelog relevant. And then that way you can kind of filter out which should be included. But
So if I asked you to write changelogs now, would you know how to get started or not?
I mean, I could quickly write a script which just takes the title and the labels and the dates and just some metadata and then links to the pull request, and that wouldn't take that long, right?
Okay, well,
But
that would be a starting point, right? To have some dummy data to begin with.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah, and then there, of course, then there's the issue of, okay, if some of the pull requests, no, wait, no, never mind. Yeah, and then what? Yeah, and then but we still would need to go through them for actually creating the changelog, right?
Yeah, I mean, the changelogs inevitably, they will look different than the pull request because in a pull request, the developer writes like essays sometimes, right? Well, maybe
Yeah, but do we
sometimes.
just take the title, or do we need a
So yeah, so I mean, the title doesn't have to be exactly the same as a pull request title, but often it is.
Yeah.
I would also have to look back at the changelogs that I've written in the patch to see like what the style was there to get a feel for it again. But yeah, I think what is required is that probably one person like drives it, because what I've seen is when like DM Green creates a changelog, he writes them totally different, right? And they just don't
Yeah.
fit, and to keep it, and it's also a bit of an art to write them concise, right? To not put like abundance of unnecessary wordings and information. And sometimes I'm sitting there and thinking really long, like how do I write this? And it's more
Yeah.
difficult when you're not native English than
Yeah, I agree.
then it can be really demanding. So it's I don't think there is a way to get around automating this unless the AI can somehow help with this and generate epic changelogs. But I don't know. It's
I don't trust that, to be
yeah,
honest.
I
Yeah,
think
and then of course,
generating something to have a starting point is probably a good idea, but then you will have to do manual labor to
yeah,
optimize this. Maybe what we can do,
and
yeah,
maybe right now, while I say we in more of a broader sense because it's really mostly you guys, is fixing the code base and not really introducing anything. Maybe because and okay, maybe it actually in the end it doesn't make sense to have like this automated way of doing it because the general player only wants to know, okay, we fixed mismatches with the map transfer. I don't know.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
all of that
there are a lot
might.
of changes that can be summarized and maybe consolidated. Like, for example, yesterday and today, I have merged a whole bunch of like
Yeah, I saw it.
refactors and fixes. And a lot of these that can be bundled together, maybe combined or put into one YAML file, right? Or it can be like, there could be many that we just combine into one thing and with one sentence and it could be done, right? So
Yeah,
things that are not user facing, they are not that important as like a interesting changelog, but they probably can still be linked into something that says, you know, improved quality of code or improved stability, you know, something like this. Quality of code,
yeah,
I think that describes it best. Improve quality of code, and then have like a number of pull requests linked in there, right? Um,
but yeah,
and so that just tells the user that, you know, there have been changes that we don't know about, but they touch the code in ways to hopefully make it better, right?
yeah,
So that exists. And then yeah, any change that fixes something that we have introduced. So for example, now Helmut said that the replay score screen now shows a continue button, right? So that will, I will have to create a fix for this, and this is something that won't show up in the changelog because it's something we have introduced in this version and we fix it in this version, right? So the end user should not know that this happened, right? It's a
yeah.
an internal,
But
like, intermediate bug. Yeah.
I agree. Um, I actually when I think about it, I think the easiest way to kind of give ourselves an advantage for when we inevitably need to do this is maybe add a bit more labels that just tells this might be relevant for the changelog, or this is definitely not relevant for anything, or this is a change for maybe use the, for example, we have this project label, for example. Maybe if, of course, we would need to figure out a way to distinguish between versions, but generally speaking,
That's a
if it
very
has
good
some
idea.
kind of label, then you can help yourself there. And then when we have all these YAML files, at least we can filter it by is changelog relevant or
That's a very good idea. Yeah.
because a lot of the things you merged these days, the past few 2 days or something, that is never gonna be relevant for maybe even us, unless we figure out they introduced an additional bug or something.
Yeah, as I said, this is just like something that improves
Yeah,
overall
compiler
quality.
warning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Um,
some of these could, like, you know, improve stability, but it's not entirely clear. Or yeah, if it's labeled
yeah,
as a
but they are not
refactor,
made with the intention.
everything that is a refactor is certainly not relevant refactor.
Right.
But if
Right.
it's marked as a fix, then, you know, it does contribute to some stability, right?
Yeah, and that's again, and it is difficult to create a standardized or almost automated way of doing it because it requires that everyone follow. We have clear guides and labels and stuff like that. That's exactly what we all know exactly what it means, and we only use it for that exact purpose. So, for example, a fix that can be maybe a lot of things. It can be a fix in how the, I don't know, code template was made, or it can be a dedicated or like actual fix in the game that maybe some mechanic behaved unexpectedly. Let's say we fix the Tomahawk missile disappearing when its target uh, dies, for example. I don't know if that's a fix. I don't know if that's intention. intentional, but let's say we did that. Then what is the fix label? What does that mean? Does it mean code related, or does it mean gameplay related? So
Well-
we kind of need to maybe separate PRs into these things, so that if it's
the
game
labels,
related,
the labels do have some descriptions which give
Yeah.
it some hint as to what it means. So bug,
yeah, but fix is fixing something. And,
Yes.
and I agree. I know it's fixing something,
yeah.
but
So
is
so
it fixing
okay.
the code, or is it fixing the game?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, maybe that's a bit unclear. Yeah, it's fixing code. And so I put the bug label when it's a bug, like actually a bug in the game that you can see.
Right,
And
right.
when I don't put bug, then it's something that it's not user facing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So you would.
I
you
hope
would
I
use
was
bug.
I do try to take care of the labels.
Yeah.
I always visit them and put them and before I merge. So there should be consistency. Yeah. So crash means there's actually a crash. You see a crash in some scenario, right? Crash.
Yeah. It
Bug.
fixes a crash.
Yeah.
But
So and bug means something is broken in the game in some way. The user can see it, right? Like
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah.
Like I don't know. The menu doesn't open. Yeah. Bug.
Hmm.
Fix means it does not. It's fixing something. Fix level. I think sometimes you also combine it with bug. But
Right.
I think to put fix with bug is not necessary because bug implies that there's a fix, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
so fix is like the weaker version of a bug. Yeah, that's why it's also green
Yeah.
and not red, right?
Not red. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
mean, based on what I'm looking at pull request, it does feel like fix is more of some code that
Yeah.
was not
yeah.
doing what it was intended to, right?
So maybe you
Not
can
initialized, not something. Yeah.
maybe you can maybe we can think of it like so there is refactor, there's fix, there's bug, and there's crash, right? These are the levels. Like refactor is really harmless, like nothing changes. Fix,
Yeah.
is changing something, but we don't really see it. Bug, bad, needs to be fixed, disturbs the user experience, but life goes on.
And
Crash, very
course
bad, everyone dies,
Right.
right? So
Yeah.
there's like levels. So everything
and
that
maybe
is
there are even more levels, right? Because we also have some performance, maybe some security.
Oh yeah,
don't know.
yeah. Performance is certainly security as well. Certainly things that need to be picked up. Okay, so refactor is mostly irrelevant or always irrelevant. Fix,
Right.
I think can be relevant, but it's probably something that can be combined into one YAML to just describe stability fixes or improvements, right? It's just
Or maybe
something.
create one that's for developers. I don't know. Just have them out of the user facing.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe they don't even need to be listed at all.
But that might also be like let's say a subtask is actually, maybe we can't not go. I don't think there's a solution here where we maybe don't go through all the PRs so far, but again, also maybe clean up and really nail down what does this label mean.
Which label?
What does the labels mean? Like, okay, does fix mean fixing something in the code, or does it mean, like we talked about before, or does it also relate to fixing something in the game? No, in this case, it doesn't. So let's go back and make sure that none of the PRs are using fix where it's actually fixing a bug.
Yeah.
Because then, if all the PRs going backwards is upholding these label rules, let's call it, then we can use the labels and say, okay, from this level, kind of like log levels, right? If above this level, we want it to be included in this file or this change log, whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so you want to have bug and fix mutually exclusive?
No, I want to make sure that that a pull request doesn't have fix and bug at the same time, I think.
Yeah, so mutually
it's
exclusive.
fixed. Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe.
Okay, I filtered for fix and bug, and there are 6 closed and 1 open that have both. Yeah. So
Yeah,
we could just remove the fix from the bug. But I mean, if you wrote a script, you could also just say you ignore the fix when it's in the bug, right? And you use
yeah.
right, so you can adjust the logic accordingly. So it's not a must-have.
No, I agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. And again, yeah, just assign levels to the different labels. And again, as you say, if you want to have, let's say, bug is level 3, and we want everything level 3 and up, if it also has fix, it also has bug, so we still include it.
Yeah, I can remove it. Yeah. We can. Okay, how about we clarify this in the descriptions of these things?
Right.
We say that the fix is not a bug, right? In the label, it's
Right.
fixing
Yeah.
something, but is not user facing, something like that. I can do that. Yeah,
And
and
see, bug also has typically is user facing. So
something.
that's kind of the bug labeling, right? So that already now explains that, okay, this is not if, I don't mean, typically, bug could also be code bug, but yeah, that's the thing I'm trying to say here is that we need to clarify what the labels are. And if bug is related to how the game is and not how the code is, then we need one for bug and maybe one for code, or one for game and one for code.
Well, code is game, right?
Yeah, I agree. But
So
what the user sees.
yeah, I can I will try to come up with something, then you can see if it makes sense. We also have combined bug and crash together.
Yeah, but then they would just both. I mean, then
You just take
it
you just take the highest, right? The
right.
highest takes a
Yeah.
priority, and you ignore the
Yes.
lower one. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, um, yeah, I can write a script that just creates the YAML files for all the pull requests, and then maybe another one who, and then create like some enum type or something that's for the labels. And if you say I want level 4, maybe that's bug and up. So we also get crashes, we also get security, we also get performance. I don't know, and then that gets put into a markdown file or something, formatted into
yeah,
highest.
yeah. That's like what we then generate out of the YAML. That's a step after, right? First, we just need the YAML files. Yeah.
Right.
So the generation of the markdown, this is in place in mod builder. There's code for this, but we don't have anything beyond that. I think what would be useful is to like generate an HTML, for example, because then you can view this in the browser easily, right?
Maybe.
So, but yeah, that's
But yeah, then it's just to nail down what needs to be included in the YAML. Is it only the title, the labels, the date, and then a link?
you you can, yeah, the link to the pull, yeah, you can,
Because I did look in the super in the patch thing,
yeah,
but there's again, because you hadn't created them,
yeah.
there are some information related to the actual pull request which you won't really be able to extract without having someone actually look and write it. If you
What is that?
let me just quickly find the one of the now I can't remember where you have the YAML files in the game patch directory. All right, release. Optional. Okay, I can't remember where they are, but references. No, that's window mod scripts. Release files, English release. All sorted by date here in the change log, which seems like a big Yeah, because I think I remember something like the UV mapping on the USA spy drone or something was incorrect, and there were like sub fixes in the fix itself. So like these things you won't be able to extract, right? So it's just nailing down what is the bare minimum we can get out of everything, like the title, the merge state, the link, the labels,
You could
and those things.
generate some sub changes from the commits in the pull request.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But then again,
There are some
that
though that have like these garbage commits, right? They just build on top. But there are some pull requests that have like commits that went as is into mainline with rebase, right?
yeah.
So you could just generate and then we just delete everything that looks garbage after the fact. You can, I mean, delete is fast, right? Select, delete. So you just generate something and as a starting point, and then we can just still delete, clean up, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
But I guess we agree that the first step would just to actually get the files based on the pull requests, and then we can always decide how.
Yeah, that's probably a good starting point. Just generate it with the information you can pull, and then we take a look at that and see if it's a good basis to get started.
Maybe we can even look for, because a lot of the stuff has some relation to either an issue or another pull request. Maybe that would also be able to get extracted into the YAML file. So if it mentions some other pull request or issue, but
Maybe, yeah, you could link these things as well. Yeah, yeah, you could do
and again,
that.
but that's the thing. Does it make sense to do it in the YAML file, or does it make more sense to do it in the just linking to the pull request, and then you can go further from there?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the pull requests, they are meant to link to their issues at the top, right? So if you then click on the link in the YAML file, then you go to the pull, and there you can go further, right? So, but you could also link to issues if you liked. There's nothing speaking against that. You know, you could,
Just so maybe there's a bit more information in the YAML, but
in links you
again,
can just put a list, right? So you can put as many as you want.
yes.
Yeah.
But again, that's also, we can delete them or remove them or
Yeah.
Okay. I will try and give this a go throughout the week, and then see how it ends up looking if we pull all of them out, which has some label or higher, and then see how that turns out. How much useless stuff is there, or is there something missing which might or should have been in, let's say, a tryout changelog. Yeah.
I suggest to also generate the file names with a leading pull number, so it's easy to find it that way.
Yes.
And yeah, you also need to generate like some name for the file. That could be tricky, maybe.
I don't know what, I can remember what you did in.
Yeah, I tried to come up with a brief name for the file based on the change. So,
The easiest would be, say, take 50 characters. No, maybe that's a bit too much. Take 20 characters from the title.
Yeah, you could do that. Yeah.
Because again, and this is the stuff, right? Because we can't go in, if we want it to be meaningful, we have to make the pull request meaningful when we write them. Otherwise, we of course can't extract anything meaningful out of it.
Yeah, I mean the titles, they are supposed to be meaningful.
Yeah, and usually you and the other reviewers also update the title if you feel like it's not representative enough.
Yeah, and then so once you have this generated, then and we are happy with the generation, then you could start like polishing this, and then we could review some sample polishes and see if that looks good or not.
Maybe it's also easier when we actually have something to look at. And then people can say, this is not good, this is good, this is, can we have this?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. And maybe maybe we will end up having you or some other one. I don't know if it can be me. I'm not as good with C code as you guys are, but um, having to go through it and create the first lock and then try to be on top of it afterwards.
What do you mean?
Yeah, so maybe it's inevitable that we can extract something meaningful changelog wise out of all these pull requests, but maybe then after someone has gone through them and created one, then afterwards it might be a bit easier because we then know what we need to be aware of when we do them, so it's easier in the future.
Yeah, I mean, if you or someone can maintain this and I don't have to do it, then that would be fantastic because it's yeah, it's slowing down.
Yeah, and
certainly.
of course, I
And
guess your skills are better used somewhere else.
yeah, it's yeah, it's monkey work. It's also something that not every person that will then look at, right? So it's a thankless job, this changelog generation, in a way, right? Yeah, but it's necessary because if you want to present your product and all its details, then we need that, right? So
Yeah.
I think it's important that the players know exactly what has changed. There's great value. And but I think what will happen is, even if you have a change log, people will ask what has changed, right?
Yeah, that's true. And you
Because
always
then,
have someone asking in Discord instead of looking.
yeah, they won't look at it then. Yeah, so it probably, I think in GenHub it should show the change log like right next to the product, like visibly, right? That you when
Yeah,
when
or
there's
an
a
external link or something.
yeah, that I think would be good. Like you have like the patch, and then it shows like the version number, and then like next to it there's like a changelog button, and then you click that, and that opens a changelog, right? In some way, with some style, yeah. And then I think then it's also more intuitive for users to find this, because if you just have like an installer and you dump those changelog files on disk, right, somewhere in the install directory somewhere, or in the user data, then no one finds it, right? So
That's stupid. It needs to be hosted somewhere.
it needs to be visible in the GenHub, and then people will see it, and then hopefully they won't ask questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a dream.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it will
Okay.
be fine. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. I'll come up with something and I'll showcase it, and then people can come with their suggestions, or I don't know if it feels stupid or good or something needs to change, because maybe it is like people need something to agree or not agree with before they really take a stand on it.
Well, I think it will be super difficult to agree because everyone wants something different.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
we can't even agree on what the title for a commit should be like. so, so I don't expect any agreement on any changelog styles. Yeah. So
And then maybe that automatically means that someone will have to do it manually. But
yeah.
I will give this a go, and if it's shit, then we'll just throw it out, and someone will have to do it.
Yeah. What do you use for scripting?
For this, I'll probably use Python. There's a lot of libraries.
Yeah, Python sounds good. Yeah. With Python, you
Uh,
can generate all this stuff. Yeah.
exactly. And yeah, also has a big library support, right? So a lot of the GitHub integration is already handled, and
It's also something I'm able to understand because I did write a bit of Python, so that's good.
yeah. Yes. All right. Let's give it a go and then see where it goes.
Okay, well then I wish you best of success.
Yeah, thank you.
And then let me know when this is ready, and then we look at it and see next steps.
Yeah, I maybe I'll just write to you when I have it creating all the YAML files, and then
Okay.
maybe there we'll have to decide on what to do next. Maybe even actually create the HTML changelog, just add a functionality, so based on the label or something, it'll pull all those labels are higher into a HTML file.
Yeah. So I don't know if you have seen it. Let me look it up. Have you taken a look at General's Mod Builder?
No.
No. Okay.
Very
So
briefly, maybe, but not in depth.
let me find it here. I'll send you the link here. So there is the code that is currently used to generate the markdown from the changelogs. So there's a parser which reads all the YAML files, and it does some verifying, some checkings, and so on. It's a class that interprets it in the expected format with the different keywords that are in there. And then there's this generator Python file that then takes that guy, and then it generates the markdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there could be different generators, right? You could then use the parse data and make a different HTML one, right? With this.
Yeah.
Maybe you could even copy the generator and ask AI, hey, can you write this to generate the same instead of markdown generated as HTML? Maybe AI would generate this. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. And did you ever use this for a finished changelog, or
What do you mean?
did you ever use the parser and the generator to actually create a markdown file?
Oh yeah, it in the patch it's generated. Yeah, hold on. I think you have seen it, no?
Probably. Maybe I just forgot.
You probably have seen it. Let me see what that is. Copy link address here. Yeah, here. This one. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. So there's some filters, some like all. I think you mentioned it earlier, right? All by date.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I have seen this. Okay.
And the filters they are set up in a JSON file. So let me find that in case you haven't seen that. Here's a definition how that is generated. Let me remove here those embeds. Yeah.
Right.
So the
Takes
changelog.
all the YAML files.
Yeah.
Creates this. Yes. Right.
So you can specify the sorting, what should be on the top, what should be at the bottom. You can specify the for the date. You can specify the order, ascending or descending. You can have inclusion and exclusion of labels.
Yeah. Okay. I might then just reuse this.
Yeah. So
when I have the YAML files, but again, the YAML files will be very bare in that it's only really the title, link, something.
Yeah,
labels.
I don't think we need to worry about the generation for now. Just the raw data. That's the hardest part. Yeah.
Yeah, and then again, worst part, maybe someone will have to go through and delete stuff, or yeah. Okay, let's see. I think right now, again, as you say, if we are having difficulties agreeing on different standard ways of doing it, then it really can't feasibly be automated, right? So because everyone would do it differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Unless we only use data that is GitHub related,
I
like
think
labels and types. And
I suspect that getting like the syntax and the formatting right, that's probably more likely to happen. But getting the wording in line, that I don't see that happening. Like people won't write sentences that are consistent with like a established way of writing. That won't happen.
but again, depending on how far we want to take this, that should be maybe a part of the review process. Also, getting
Yeah.
to know the wording, but that again puts more time on reviewing, which
Even more work. Yeah.
so.
Yeah, it's really hard as a changelog. Yeah.
And if it's not, again, if it's not a priority, then it's not a priority, and then we will have to do it when it becomes one.
Yeah, I mean, if you could get this done, it would be fantastic. I don't expect you to get this done, but if you can, it would make my life much easier. Yeah,
Right.
you give it a try. Let's see what we can do. Maybe you get a feel once you touched up a few of them, and
Right.
maybe we can have like a maybe we can have like an online course, and we sit together and we just formulate some sentences and see if we
Right.
like them, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
then maybe you write and I can tell you what I think about the sentence, and then we can see what we can do about it. Because I think I can explain why I would want to change something. I think I can explain it. It's often about the conciseness of the
Yeah.
sentence. Like if it's too convoluted, too complicated, explain. Yeah, I think that's mainly it. And then maybe consistency. That's a big thing. Like consistency is a problem because when you have when the changelog entries are worded different from one record to another, I think I already mentioned it before, then it's harder to understand, harder to
Yeah.
read this thing, and then it's hard to learn from something that is like incoherently formulated, and every sentence is like differently structured, even though they explain very similar concepts, right?
Yeah.
It just makes it harder because you need to think, okay, what does it actually mean? Whereas if you have a sentence and the next sentence basically explains the same thing just with a different unit name, right? Then it's
Yeah.
much easier to understand what that means. But if it was written in a different way, right, but would still effectively mean the same thing but for a different unit, then it's harder to understand, right? You see. So
Yeah.
and that's why consistency is so important, to write these things like in a way. And often what I did is when I wrote something, then I looked back at maybe some other cases where I wrote something before to see like how I did it, and then I copy pasted it, and then adjusted it, and this helps also to keep consistency. But yeah, it's more complicated because you don't just write it from scratch, but you craft it, right? It becomes like an art form, so to say, right?
Yeah. And especially because that works when it's you, and mostly only you. But as soon as we have 5, 10 people submitting, then it kind of becomes the responsibility of the one reviewing in some way, right?
Yeah.
If not the contributor, then the guy who's reviewing needs to say this needs to be worded differently or try writing this instead. But again, that's not really the most fun work.
Yeah.
Um, all right, let's leave it at that and see what I come up with, and then we'll take it from there.
All right, sounds good. Then I
Yes.
wish you a great week
Yeah, you too.
and best of success.
Don't get to bed too late, right?
All right,
Yeah. See you.
goodbye.